America, the land of the free. But for much of its history, freedom depended on the color of your skin. In the 1950s, love itself could be a crime, punishable by prison, exile, or worse. Yet in a small rural county of Virginia, two ordinary people dared to love beyond the boundaries of race. Their names were Richard Loving and Mildred Jeter. They didn't seek power. They didn't seek fame. They only sought the right to love each other. Little did they know, their quiet devotion would spark one of the most important civil rights victories in American history. A victory that would echo across generations and reshape the meaning of love, family, and freedom in the United States. This is the full, untold, deeply human story of Richard and Mildred Loving, the love that changed America. To understand the Lovings, you must first understand where they came from. Caroline County, Virginia, was not like the rest of the segregated South. Though racism existed, the community was small, intertwined, and familiar. Black, white, and Native American families had lived side by side for generations, often working the same fields, attending the same events, and even socializing together. Richard Loving, a white bricklayer, tall, blonde, and gentle in nature, came from a family that owned little but worked hard. He wasn't political. He wasn't outspoken. He was known for his quiet dignity and his strong sense of fairness. Mildred Dolores Jeter, shy, soft-spoken, and known affectionately as String Bean for her slender frame, came from a mixed heritage of Black and Rappahannock Native American ancestry. She grew up surrounded by siblings, cousins, and a tight-knit community that offered warmth despite the harshness of segregation. They met not in a dramatic moment, but in the natural rhythm of small-town life. Richard often spent time with Mildred's brothers, helping with cars and small jobs. And somewhere between those ordinary days, friendship became love. But in the 1950s, such a love could not be spoken aloud. Interracial relationships were taboo, not just frowned upon, but criminalized. Yet Richard and Mildred found sanctuary in each other's presence. They drove down quiet roads at sunset. They talked for hours under the tall Virginia trees. They attended local gatherings where people didn't question their bond, at least not openly. Mildred later said, "We were just happy. We didn't think about the law." But the law thought about them. When Mildred became pregnant, Richard wanted to do the right thing, for her, for their child, and for their future. But Virginia's Racial Integrity Act of 1924 made it a felony for a white person to marry someone of another race. So the young couple made a bold choice. On June 2nd, 1958, they traveled to Washington, D.C., where interracial marriage was legal. In a small, modest courthouse, they exchanged vows. No grand ceremony, no celebration, just two people promising to love each other forever. They returned home believing their marriage certificate would protect them. They were wrong. On July 11th, 1958, just after midnight, the Lovings were woken by the sound of footsteps and flashlights. The sheriff and his deputies burst into their bedroom. Imagine the fear. Two young newlyweds asleep in their own home, suddenly surrounded by armed officers. Richard calmly pointed to the framed marriage license hanging above their bed. But the sheriff coldly replied, "That piece of paper means nothing here." They arrested both Richard and Mildred. Imagine Mildred, just 18, pregnant with her first child, dragged from her bed and taken to jail. She remained there for several nights before being bailed out.
Richard was released the next day. Their crime? Interracial marriage, a felony punishable by prison. In 1959, they stood before Judge Leon Bazile. Instead of justice, they received a sentence rooted in hatred. Bazile declared, Almighty God created the races and placed them on separate continents. The fact that he separated the races shows he did not intend them to mix. His ruling, 1 year in prison, or a suspended sentence if they left Virginia immediately and did not return together for 25 years. The Lovings were banished from their home. They packed what little they had and moved to Washington, D.C., a city loud, unfamiliar, and a world away from their quiet Virginia life. Washington, D.C. was overwhelming. Richard worked construction. Mildred raised their growing family, but the city was suffocating for them. They missed Virginia. They missed the fresh air. They missed the community that had shaped them. Worse, they could not return together, not for holidays, not for emergencies, not even to care for sick relatives. Mildred felt trapped. She would later say, I didn't know what to do. I felt so alone. One day, longing for home, she wrote a letter, a simple, heartfelt plea to U.S. Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy.
This letter changed everything. Kennedy forwarded Mildred's letter to the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. Two young lawyers, Bernard Cohen and Philip Hirschkopf, saw an opportunity not just to help a family, but to challenge the very foundation of racial discrimination. They visited the Lovings in their apartment. What they found was not activists or revolutionaries, but a quiet couple who simply wanted to go home. Richard was a man of few words. Mildred was gentle, shy, and polite. Their message was simple. We just want to live in Virginia as husband and wife. The ACLU filed motion after motion to overturn the Loving sentence. Each time the Virginia courts rejected them. The couple remained stuck in exile, but the civil rights movement was gaining momentum. Marches, sit-ins, freedom riders. America was changing, and the Lovings case was slowly becoming part of something much bigger. By 1966, after years of rejection, the ACLU appealed to the highest court in the land, the United States Supreme Court. On April 10, 1967, arguments began. The state of Virginia defended the racist marriage ban, claiming it protected the purity of the races. The ACLU lawyers countered with the Constitution, the 14th Amendment, equal protection, and the fundamental right to marry. Richard did not attend the session, uncomfortable with publicity, but he sent a message through lawyer Bernard Cohen. Tell the court I love my wife, and it's unfair that I can't live with her in Virginia. Simple words, but they carried a force greater than any legal argument. On June 12, 1967, the Supreme Court delivered a unanimous, historic decision. Interracial marriage bans were struck down nationwide. The court declared, marriage is one of the basic civil rights of man. With a single ruling, the Lovings won freedom not only for themselves, but for millions of couples across America. June 12th would later become Loving Day, celebrated every year. Richard and Mildred moved back to Central Point, Virginia, to the quiet life they had always wanted. They bought a small piece of land. Richard built their home with his own hands. They raised their 3 children away from the spotlight. Though they changed America, they never sought attention. They valued family, simplicity, and peace. In 1975, tragedy struck. A drunk driver crashed into the Lovings' car. Richard was killed instantly. Mildred lost sight in one eye. She never remarried. She continued living quietly in the home Richard built until her passing in 2008. In her final years, she supported causes for marriage equality, but remained humble, saying, "I wasn't trying to do anything but get home." Yet her quiet strength changed the course of American history. The Lovings' victory proved that love, real, honest love, is stronger than fear, stronger than prejudice, and stronger than injustice. Their story is not just about a court case. It is about two people who held on to each other when the world tried to tear them apart. Richard and Mildred Loving didn't set out to be heroes. They set out to be husband and wife, and in doing so, they changed America forever.